Subaru's Impreza 1.6 IRC brings four-wheel drive traction within the affordable reach of family buyers who neither want or need any kind of SUV. It's a conventional focus-sized family hatch with very unconventional underpinnings, the symmetrical all-wheel drive system paired to a uniquely configured 1.6-litre petrol boxer engine. Not a package likely to suit everyone, but perfect perhaps for those in search of something that's just that little bit different in this segment.
Let's imagine this. Your home is up there, and every year during the colder months, your little family hatchback struggles up it. Sometimes though, it doesn't, and you have to abandon the thing at the bottom and walk with the kids and the shopping. The obvious answer is to get one of those small SUVs with four-wheel drive, but you haven't done that because you found out that one of those things will be very expensive, both to buy and to run. Clunky to drive too, and rather over the top for what you actually need. Perhaps what you actually need is something like this, a Subaru Impreza. As you can see, this isn't an SUV. It's not even one of those trendy crossover models you see so often these days. Cars that seem to promise four-wheel drive capability, but usually don't deliver it. No, for someone in the situation I've described, this is instead a means of affordable family transport that delivers everything you need and nothing you don't. It's the only sensibly priced C-segment model that delivers its power to all four wheels, yet, on paper at least, there seem to be few compromises to make for that kind of all-weather capability. It's not overly expensive, it's tough and durable, and provided you're happy with the 5-door hatchback body style, it's just as practical as that comparably sized ordinary two-wheel drive Focus, Astra or Golf you might have been thinking about. True, there's no diesel engine option, and the single 1.6-litre petrol unit you do get doesn't trouble the class frontrunners in terms of fuel consumption or cleanliness. Still, the running costs are affordable, and you get a lot of extra standard features that you'd have to pay more money for if you went for the kind of cars I just mentioned. So, does it all add up? That's what we're here to find out. If for you the idea of a Subaru Impreza conjures up images of World Rally Championships, sonic blue paint, gold wheels and big spoilers, then you're probably no longer target market for this car. The WRX STR model you're thinking of is still made by the Japanese brand, but that car long ago lost the Impreza tag, leaving it to this more modest, family-orientated offering. What does remain here, though, are two genuine Impreza reliables, namely all-wheel drive and the flat-4 boxer power plant that I'll start by telling you about. In this case, given that there are no diesels this time around, we're talking about a 114 PS 1.6-litre petrol unit that needs a bit of revving, but when pushed, will deal with the 0 to 62 mph sprint in 12.3 seconds on the way to 115 miles an hour in the 5-speed manual model. These figures change only slightly to 12.6 seconds and 111 miles an hour if you opt for the Lineartronic CVT automatic version. Subaru has founded its reputation on the low centre of gravity offered by this kind of horizontally opposed or boxer-style engine, one in which the cylinders lay flat on their sides, the pistons travelling towards each other like the fists of two pugilists. It's a unique selling point that you notice every time you rev the engine and get immediately reminded of the gruffly soundtrack common to everything that the company makes. The boxer design also produces a low centre of gravity in the car, helping the Impreza retain its high levels of grip and steering accuracy. This layout's also supposed to reduce body roll, though to be honest, that's still quite noticeable. Onto this car's other more important unique attribute, its symmetrical all-wheel drive system, a package the brand has been perfecting since 1972. No other family hatchback in this class offers 4x4 traction, and it's even a very rare feature to find in affordable compact crossover models. Even better, this is a proper four-wheel drive layout, by which I mean a setup which constantly shunts power to each wheel, rather than, as with cheaper systems, simply reacting when the front wheels slip. So how does it all work? Well, the technical bit's coming up. The manual model features a centre differential using a viscous limited slip differential and splits its torque delivery equally. So in any given situation, you've usually got 50% of the power going to the front and 50% pushed back towards the rear. If things get really slippy, say you hit a patch of black ice or something, then the system will detect it and adjust the torque distribution accordingly. Go for an Impreza with a Lineartronic automatic gearbox and there's a slightly different layout, though it ultimately delivers the same kind of result. Here you get an electronically controlled multi-plate clutch, and this time a 60-40 front to rear torque split, though again the system will automatically adjust this as it deems necessary, sending more torque to the rear wheels if the system detects slippage at the front. If you've glazed over trying to understand all of that, then don't worry. I struggle with it too. What's important though is the feeling of security the symmetrical all-wheel drive technology provides. You don't need to drive very far in poor conditions to realise that this car delivers a stronger connection to the road and a much greater feeling of grip and security than a conventional two-wheel drive Focus-sized family hatchback would. That applies not only on icy tarmac but also on surfaces like muddy tracks or light sand. Plus, for really slippery surfaces, the manual model even has a low-range gearbox, which is operated by a lever next to the handbrake. Of course, you shouldn't suppose from that this is any kind of off-road tool. There isn't either the ride height or the underbody protection for that. But if you live in the country, at the end of an unmade track or up a bit of a steep hill, I'd say that this car would be just about perfect for motoring in the colder months, especially if you invest in a set of winter tyres. Get one, and when the snow starts to fall and the ice starts to settle, you'll be glad you didn't buy something more run-of-the-mill. The look of this fourth generation Impreza model will be familiar to those who know their Subarus. Those who don't will find a smart but unremarkable five-door hatchback body shape, incorporating the brand's usual Hawkeye headlights and hexagonal grille. Plus you get these sharp creases that run the length of the bonnet in an attempt to express a sense of stability. There are quite a few family resemblances with the company's XV crossover model, all of them intentional since that car was launched in Japan as the Impreza XV. In profile, where a solid line runs along the length of the car parallel to the windows, you pick up some of the changes that the designers have made to try and make this car more spacious inside. The A-pillars have been moved 200mm closer to the front, which also allows a sleeker, more aerodynamic shape, emphasised by these subtle wheel arch blisters. Then there are these particularly short front and rear overhangs, which Subaru says have helped them add 25mm to the wheelbase. Moving back, this more distinctive C-pillar plays its part in what the brand hopes is a purposeful, lean-forward stance. There are chunky bumpers too, defining a cleanly styled rear end. In many 4x4 models, the practicality of this part of the design would be compromised by the all-wheel drive mechanicals, but no. Raise the rear hatch and you'll find revealed a competitive 380-litre space that Subaru says will accommodate 5 suitcases from 5 seated passengers, or 3 golf bags. They could be right. The reshaped roof structure here has certainly allowed for a taller boot aperture, which along with the low loading lip makes it easier to access the cargo area and load in heavier or taller items like bikes or pushchairs. Overall, we're talking of a very similar capacity to that you get in a Golf and most other segment rivals, and notably more than you'd be saddled with in a Ford Focus. Nice touches include this 15-litre underfloor storage area and these small hooks built into the side of the boot that are there to allow shopping bags to be hung up so they don't roll around. You might also notice that with the hatch raised, you get this estate car style rolling load cover, rather than the cruder hinged parcel shelf most rivals offer. The rear of the boot floor rises to meet the seat back, which means that there's a seamless floor when the 60/40 split folding seat back is folded, even if the 1,270-litre area opened up isn't completely flat. The long doors that are part of this fourth generation design means that access to the rear seat is good. And once you're inside, you feel the benefit of this generation model's 25mm of extra wheelbase length. There's 9mm of extra legroom than there was in the previous version of this car, meaning that current Focus class standards can be matched in this respect. Knee room is decent too, aided by the prominent inverted curve shape adopted for the front seat backs. As usual in this segment, 3 adults can only be accommodated at a squash, but a trio of kids will be fine, and a pair of fully grown folk should be able to make themselves comfortable on all but the longest journeys. Moving up front, I mentioned that these A-pillars had been moved forward. That, along with a higher hip point, makes it easier to get in and out of the car, especially for older folk. Once inside, the same front pillar change gives you a wider field of vision that's further aided by the 60mm lowering of the window line. Look around you, and the emphasis is firmly on durability rather than fashionable design. There's little to surprise and delight you here, but you get the feeling it'll probably outlast you. To be fair, Subaru has tried to push things a little more upmarket this time around. So there's a soft touch dashboard finish, a metal look fascia, and easily cleaned part leather on the flat supportive seats to try and lift things a bit. Glance at the centre of the dash and you'll note an architecture fashioned before the current trend in this segment for decluttered surfaces and fancy middle-mounted infotainment screens. There's none of that here. Still, in compensation, you get a number of features as standard that would be costly extras on rivals. Things like seat heating, cruise control and a rear-view parking camera. There's also a smart multi-function display on the top of the centre stack that gives you safety, efficiency, trip computer and maintenance information at a glance, plus real-time readouts on the state of the all-wheel drive system. Ahead of you there's a smart 3-spoke leather-trimmed steering wheel that's rather over-buttoned but feels good to hold. Through it you view a clear set of dials separated in the centre by a large LCD monitor offering key driving information at a glance that you toggle through using the steering wheel switches. As for practicalities, well, there are door pockets designed to hold 1 litre bottles, a central console tray and a large console box. The basic concept here is fairly straightforward. Were you thinking of a compact 5-door family hatchback, something Focus or Astra-sized, perhaps with petrol power to keep the upfront asking price down, and with a reasonable spec? Well, here, for the same sort of money that a conventional choice of that sort would cost, you can have much the same thing, but with the all-important addition of 4-wheel drive. In a country with as many rainy days a year as ours, that's an extra feature well worth having. I talked in terms of this Subaru costing much the same sort of money as a comparable 2-wheel drive C-segment hatch. By that I mean an asking price of around £17,500 for the single 5-door 1.6 litre petrol-powered RC spec Impreza model on sale here, though you can opt to pay £1,500 more to get the same car with Lineartronic automatic transmission. In terms of discussing the value proposition those kind of figures represent, I have to start by talking of this car's exclusivity. Unless you're prepared to consider 4-wheel drive versions of Audi's A3 and BMW's 1 Series, which many won't be given that they sit in the £25,000 to £30,000 bracket, there's no other Focus-sized family hatch you can buy that even offers the option of 4-driven wheels. That's forced most of the press into rather unfairly trying to compare this 4x4 model against 2-wheel drive family hatchback rivals. Still, those who insist on doing that and putting this Impreza up against comparably sized and similarly performing petrol-driven 2-wheel drive rivals will find that this Subaru will cost them a fraction less than the cheapest petrol-driven Volkswagen Golf. Plus, it could also slightly undercut comparable versions of other C-segment cars, like Peugeot's 308 1.2 ETHP 110 and Nissan's Pulsar DI-GT 115. If you were wondering about Ford's Focus, well, an Impreza costs only a little more than that car, assuming that you're considering the Focus in its most popular 1.0T EcoBoost 100 PS guise. And Impreza money lies only slightly above entry-level petrol-powered versions of cars like the Honda Civic and the Mazda 3. Of course, there are comparably sized two-wheel drive family hatches that would cost you less. You'd expect there would be. You'd save around £1,000 by opting for, say, a Vauxhall Astra 1.6i, 16-valve VVT 115 PS, a Seat Leon 1.2 TSI, or a Hyundai i30 1.4. And your saving might be as much as £2,500 to £3,000 if you were prepared to look at entry-level petrol versions of less popular comparably sized family hatches, like Skoda's Rapid Spaceback, Kia's Ceed, Toyota's Auris and Citroen's C4. In all of these cases, though, much of the prospective price saving would evaporate once you'd match the car in question to this Impreza's pretty generous spec. I'll come to that in a minute. In any case, as I said at the beginning, all of this is missing the point. The unique selling point here is four-wheel drive. If you don't buy into that, then you probably won't be buying into this car. But let's say you do. Let's say all-wheel drive traction is important to you. Maybe you live in the country, or perhaps your daily work or school-run commute takes in roads that can rapidly turn treacherous in the winter months. For you, this car's USP makes perfect sense. Indeed, it's possibly something you always wanted, but were put off from having by the high prices of the small RAV4 and CR-V-style SUVs that perhaps seemed to be the only option when it came to the need for a compact family car with 4x4 capability. You may also have been disappointed to find that four-wheel drive is a feature rarely offered on the current generation of widely promoted Nissan Juke-style compact crossover models. Or if it is, it's only available on ridiculously expensive flagship variants. To give you a feel for that, with the few crossover contenders that do provide an all-wheel drive option, I'll tell you that for the cheapest petrol-powered 4x4 versions of the Vauxhall Mokka, the Mini Countryman, and the Suzuki SX4 S-Cross, you'll be looking at respective premiums over this Impreza of around £1,000, around £2,500, or over £4,500. In fact, unless you're prepared to look at something like the Fiat Panda 4x4, which really is too small for a family, only the cheapest budget brands can meet the need for 5-seat, petrol-powered, four-wheel drive transport and anything like sensible money. To be specific, you could save around £1,000 by opting for a SsangYong Corando, and several thousand more than that by going for a petrol 4x4 version of Dacia's Duster. In both those cases, though, you'd be settling for cheaper build quality, lower equipment levels, poor residual values, and clunkier handling, which isn't too tempting a combination. All of that may lead you to decide that ultimately there's nothing quite like a Subaru Impreza. If you have reached that conclusion, then you'll be wanting to know just how generous the Japanese brand has been when it comes to this car's standard equipment levels. And the answer is that you shouldn't be disappointed. Included in the deal, you get smart 16-inch alloy wheels, front fog lamps, daytime running lights, UV protection glass to shield you from the sun's glare, auto wipers, a Thatcham Category 1 alarm, power folding heated door mirrors with integrated LED turn signals, and hill start assist to stop you from drifting backwards at uphill junctions. Inside there's a 6-speaker 180-watt CD audio system with controls on the leather-wrapped steering wheel, as well as a USB port and an auxiliary input jack for your iPod. You can even search your music and access other functions with voice commands. There's also Bluetooth for your phone, dual-zone automatic air conditioning, a rear-view camera and cruise control, plus heating for the part leather-trimmed front seats with the driver's chair featuring 6-way manual adjustment. You also get nice little touches like a leather gear knob and a de-icer function that stops your windscreen wipers from getting stuck to the screen on a frosty day. In other words, it's a very complete tally, and a list that you'd find it impossible to match on a comparably sized two-wheel drive family hatchback for anything like this Impreza's money. Indeed, the sole option that buyers can add to this car is a Pioneer satellite navigation system. Perhaps the only thing I'd argue with is Subaru's decision to include one of those fiddly tyre mobility kits in place of a spare wheel. Those kind of things have no place on any sort of four-wheel drive car. On to safety. Also well catered for with anti-whiplash seats, ISOFIX child seat fastenings and Subaru's electronic stability program, VDC or Vehicle Dynamics Control. This features an emergency brake assist function and a brake override control system, which ensures that braking always takes precedence if both brake and throttle pedals are pressed at the same time. A visual representation of the VDC system is shown on the multifunction display on the dashboard, which indicates the effect of the setup by changing the colour of the wheels of the vehicle depicted on the display. If all of this, along with the extra traction of four-wheel drive, fails to help you avoid an accident, you'll be glad to know that no fewer than 8 airbags will spring to your aid. Twin front, side, curtain and knee bags being provided. This is also the only vehicle in its class to offer what Subaru calls breakaway engine technology, which, in a frontal impact, pushes the engine under the passenger compartment rather than into it. You don't fit four-wheel drive to any compact family hatchback, especially a petrol-powered one, and then expect class-leading running costs. It just can't happen. Having said that, this Impreza isn't as far off the class pace as you might fear in this respect, aided by a range of engineering improvements made to the 1.6-litre Boxer engine and a clever active valve control system that cuts engine friction to a minimum. There's also a standard auto start-stop system that cuts the now Euro 6 generation engine when you don't need it, stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights. Anyway, let's get down to the figures and see how close this four-wheel drive car can get to its less capable two-wheel drive rivals in the C segment. Specifically for the manual model, we're talking 44.1 mpg on the combined cycle and 147 grams per kilometre of CO2. Now, inevitably, that's some way off the returns you get from two-wheel drive rivals with new generation petrol engines fitted. Say the EcoBoost unit in a Focus, the ETHP power plant fitted to a Peugeot 308 or a Citroën C4, the DIGT engine in a Nissan Pulsar, or the 1.2-litre TSI unit fitted to base petrol versions of cars like Volkswagen's Golf, Seat's Leon, or Skoda's Rapid Spaceback. Look beyond these models though at family hatchbacks with older tech petrol units fitted, and the differences really aren't that great. In fact, this Subaru's returns are very similar to those you'd get in the volume petrol version of a Vauxhall Astra, the 1.6i 16-valve VVT 115 PS variant, and not a lot different to the figures you'd achieve in older tech 1.4-litre petrol units you'd find fitted to Korean contenders in this segment, like Kia's Ceed and Hyundai's i30. Another thing that the car mags won't tell you is that if, like a significant number of potential Impreza buyers, you're tempted by the Lineartronic automatic version of this car, you'll be getting one of the most frugal and affordable petrol automatic family hatchbacks you can get for what I would call sensible money, say less than £19,000. In this guise, the Subaru is more efficient than it is in manual form, managing 46.3 miles per gallon on the combined cycle and 140 grams per kilometre of CO2. To give you some perspective, that's a slight improvement on a rival Ford Focus 1.6 Ti VCT Auto and way better than a Vauxhall Astra can manage in 1.6-litre petrol automatic form. What else? Well, I like this multifunction display at the top of the dash, which delivers self-check maintenance alerts and enables you to track your fuel efficiency, even allowing you to compare the frugality you've achieved on different trips. More pointlessly, it records how long the stop-start setup has been active on any given journey. Onto insurance, which is rated at Group 13E, and of course I should mention the class-leading reliability. You get the peace of mind of a comprehensive 5-year, 100,000-mile warranty, but you're unlikely ever to need it. This car's buying proposition will depend on your perspective. Before it arrived, those wanting or needing all-wheel drive in a family-sized car are not able to spend well over £20,000 on the cheapest four-wheel drive crossovers or compact SUVs, were limited to the crudity of clunky off-roaders from budget brands. This Subaru is a much more palatable option, priced directly against mainstream focused-sized family hatches, but with four-wheel drive and a lot more equipment included, offering much more as part of the deal. Of course, if like most people you don't especially need four-wheel drive, then the charms of this car might pass you by. Such a person might question this Subaru's slightly higher running costs and less cutting-edge driving dynamics. They would still surely value the winter peace of mind and dry weather grip of all that extra traction. In other words, it'll be horses for courses, which in all likelihood will make this model a rare sight on our roads. For its likely buyers, that'll suit just fine. They'd prefer this car to be a well-kept secret, a supremely sensible choice in a country where rain is forecast for over 160 days each year. So what if it's a non-conformist choice with a cabin that fights the fashionable trends and a distinctive boxer engine spinning away beneath the bonnet? What matters is that ultimately there's nothing else quite like it.